Welcome to Beneath Your Beautiful, where guests share stories of adversity and perseverance, which inspire, encourage, and challenge us. We embrace these tough conversations, intimately exploring our loves, fears, and hopes with a delicious combination of depth and lightness.
I'm Marc David. I'm the founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. I'm an author. I'm a father. I'm a fiance to an amazing woman. I'm the son of two deceased parents. I'm a cousin and uncle and a person who just really loves the game of life, the process of life, healing, transformation, change, growth, exploring planet Earth.
Can you tell me how you got started doing this? Even what the Institute is, and then how you got started on it?
My first experience of being on planet Earth, I have a memory in infancy. I was like 8 or 9 days old, as my parents tell me. And I remember my mother was holding me in a pink blanket, and my father was driving the car, rushing me to the hospital because I was having an asthma attack a handful of days after I was born. And my early experience of life, of infancy, of age 1, 2, 3, 4 was just being extremely asthmatic and couldn't run, had trouble breathing, almost died a handful of times. So I felt I was halfway between this world and the next. And it was sort of okay on a certain level.
Yeah.
I was young. I didn't quite know what to think of it all. And my parents took me from doctor to doctor. And this was in the late 50s, early 60s. And I had somehow, when I was about 5 years old, I heard a rumor that fruits and vegetables were good for you. I was of the generation of, TV dinners and Velveeta cheese and all the things you're not supposed to eat now.
Mm-hmm.
I asked my mother to change my diet and get me apples and peas and carrots in a can because that was my concept of fruits and vegetables. And she got that. And coincidence or not, my health started to change. And for me, it was magic. It was a magical experience. First of all, knowing that me, this small little person, could take some responsibility for a situation that was painful for me. I couldn't breathe. I was immunocompromised. I couldn't run like other kids.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, I was an intense stutterer. I couldn't say a single word without stuttering it about 9 or 10 times. So, and what do I do? Because the big people couldn't help me. So here I was with diet. I was able to slowly turn around my asthma. So I was off to the races.
Yeah.
This is so great. And I became obsessed with nutrition, which led to education, which led to, from a very young age, striking out on my own. I had a practice. I'm from New York. I had a practice on Wall Street in New York City when I was, 24 years old, seeing high-powered Wall Streeters mostly for weight loss, really. And I tell people what to do. I tell them what to eat. And then they come back 2 weeks later or a week later and they say, I know what you told me to do. I know what you told me to eat. I just couldn't do it. And it was a bit of a revelation for me. I thought, oh my goodness, nutrition information, which had healed me or helped me, was not enough to help other human beings. Just because I could tell somebody all the good foods to eat doesn't mean they're going to eat it. I thought that was shocking. Because if you told me to eat something and it was good for me, I would do it. So I realized I needed to learn about psychology of eating. And I was very excited about it, and there wasn't any. There wasn't a book, there wasn't a program, there wasn't a course. I could learn about eating disorders. This was in the 70s, late 70s. I could learn about eating disorders. But I was more interested in the other 98% of us who don't have anorexia or bulimia or extreme obesity, who, we don't like our bodies, or we overeat, or we binge eat, or we emotionally eat. We want to lose some amount of weight. Like, what about those people? How do I help them?
Mm-hmm.
And because there were no resources, my next thought was, okay, I'm going to learn how to create the training that I wish I could take and write the books that I wish I could read. So that's what put me on a long path to learn psychology, to branch off and literally experiment and create the field of eating psychology for everyone. And that led to the creation of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. And it was just born out of my own struggle.
Interestingly, you don't talk about nutrition. You talk to people as if they know, because we have all experimented with our diets. We do know what's good for us and what works for us. Is that right? Is that your thought process?
Yes, I assume that, and I've seen this so many times, and I've experienced it for myself, that somebody could tell you something that you might not know so much about it. But sometimes when we hear truth, there's a little bell that goes off inside the head. When you hear something that you know, this is good for me to hear, this is right for me. Mm-hmm. This is a truism, at least for this moment. So that bell gets rung. And I think what happens is we are conditioned, we as human beings are conditioned in this world that we are born into to not trust the body.
Yeah.
Ask your doctor. Go to the experts. And yeah, of course we need to go to experts. If the electricity goes out in my house, I don't know what to do. I need an expert. So that's fine. Of course we need experts. But there's a place where we are taught to limp a little bit when it comes to our own body wisdom, when it comes to the messages that naturally want to come through, but are often short-circuited because I need to go to an expert or I need to read a book. Information is good. I love nutrition information. I love food information. And at the end of the day, what are you going to do? What are you going to eat?
Right.
Because you can read so many books about food and what to eat, and they're all written by an expert and they all have scientific proof and they all say something different.
It's really true.
It is.
It's exhausting. Yeah.
Yes. So the trick is to kind of bless it all and realize that, you know, something, maybe there's a nugget of wisdom in any nutritional approach. And there's no one size fits all perfect diet for all human beings all the time because we're different. And we have different genetics. We have different lifestyle. We have different phases of life. We have different inclinations and preferences and climates and seasons. And you mix that all in together. And that's going to probably determine, you know, to some degree, what's good for me to eat. And I think at the end of the day, anyway, it's an experiment because no matter what you and I eat, we could eat the healthiest food that we can imagine, that you've studied. This is the healthiest food in the universe. And the end result of you and I eating the healthiest food in the universe is that we're going to die at some point. So we're all going to end up in the same place. So right. It's really about, yeah, what do I want to eat? But what kind of life do I want to live? Who do I want to be?
When I was on your podcast, you said to me, a queen sits on her throne and doesn't worry about, are people going to like me? Am I too heavy? She's secure in herself. Mm-hmm. That spoke to me because I think my life is short and I could die at any moment. My mom died at 46. Her mom died at 46. I just know that life is short and I don't want to waste it worrying about my body or what anybody thinks about me or anything. So that was something that really spoke to me. And it's what I hope for others, that we stop wasting time hating ourselves. And so is that the common denominator you see with people? Are we all so full of just self-hatred? And how do we solve that?
What a good question. Here's how the world tells us to solve our self-hate or our self-dislike. Mm-hmm. Buy things, consume things, put these things on your skin, put these pills in your mouth, do these experiences. How is it that we are constantly being referred to as consumers?
Yeah.
Back in the 1940s, you were a citizen, and now they call us consumers. It's an interesting switch. Mm-hmm. I always think of self-hate and self-attack and self-blame and self-judgment. It's a viral belief that I should attack myself in order to somehow be better. Mm-hmm. You didn't invent that. I didn't invent that. No particular person we could identify invented that. It's floating in the atmosphere. We catch it from the world, and it seems to be an undercurrent that we don't notice in so much of our media and so many of the stories in the books that we're exposed to as young people. And it's easy in this world to be born into shame and guilt. We have shame about the body. At some point, all of a sudden, we're embarrassed about our body.
Mm-hmm.
And we're given solutions like, well, change it then. you got to be taller, shorter, I don't know, thinner, fatter, more muscle, less muscle, something. You got to change your body in order to be lovable. And there's this list, and we all have our list that we were somehow given or conditioned to believe. Here's what you got to do. So you're lovable, you're approved, you're accepted, and you're one of the winners. And particularly in my profession, I see that quite a bit, that there's this promise. It's a false promise. And the false promise is, when I have the body that I want, everything's going to be okay. I will be the real me. My real life begins. Right now, I'm not the real me because I don't have my real body. This is not my real body. This is, I don't know, it's an imposter. But when I have the real body, I'm more confident, I'm more outgoing, I'm lighter, I'm just more sexy, I'm whatever we say it is.
Yeah.
So really what we're saying is we're affirming, I am not happy now. Nor can I be happy now because I don't have the body I want now. Therefore, I'm not happy, but I'll be happy in the future. So we make this strange bargain with time because we think there will come a time when that body will occur and all of a sudden I'll jump onto the world stage and go, ta-da, I'm here.
Yeah. I can count on my times I've ta-da'd. Just embarrassing.
We are often living in the false belief that my life begins at a future time.
Yeah.
My father died at age 59. He had a brain tumor, and it's so cliche, but I remember when he said it, it was so poignant and so powerful. He was, I don't know, probably 6 months away from his death. And we were looking out the backyard window of his house. And he just said to me, I literally have never stopped to smell the roses.
Mm.
He meant it.
Yeah.
Because he was running all his life to do something and be better and accomplish and do his job and his duties, and all with the promise that someday my real life begins.
Right. My mom was a fine artist and had 6 children in 9 years and was single.
Wow.
By the time I was 1, and I'm the youngest. And so she was just living a life of getting by, of struggle. And she used to say she'll paint when she retires. And of course, she died young. I tell that story all the time so people stop waiting. I'm not promised tomorrow. I'm not promised later today. I really appreciate you and your work. When I listen to your podcast, I just appreciate the way you speak to everyone. And I like that I'm given the benefit of the doubt. You're assuming that I'm smart enough and that I've lived enough life to know what's good for me. And I appreciate that. Why is it that we're on the hamster wheel, that even though I love myself in this body, the heaviest I've ever been, I have the best marriage and husband and sex life, despite all that, I have a magazine I'm proud of, a podcast I'm proud of, a career, but I still struggle with the food aspect. It's not cleared up yet. Mm-hmm. And I keep expecting it to, I'm going to eat slower or pay attention, or I'm going to do all the things. I'm on a hamster wheel, no matter how much I've listened to you, which I wish that wasn't true. So for people like me, what do you have to say about that?
I think oftentimes what we need is a spiritual reckoning, meaning, here's how I think life should be. I think life should be fair. I don't think it's fair that my parents died young. I don't think it's fair that good people go through difficult things, and I know a lot of people that are not so good and they seem to have it easy. I think life should be fair. I think wealth should be distributed more equally. I have a lot of ways that if I was general manager of the world, this is how the world would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you just described in yourself is you're describing our strange and beautiful humanity, which is that, something, one of the aspects of being human is we can have all these wonderful things and still feel like it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that I just noticed that I have all these wonderful things and it's not enough, then what's my spiritual practice? How do I use that to become my best self? I will look at any challenge around food and body or life as a great teacher. It's here to teach me. Sometimes I'm a very good student. Sometimes I am a very reluctant student. I don't want to learn this. I want to learn something easy. I want to learn something fun.
Yeah.
I want to go play out in the yard, learn that way.
I really feel that. I really resonate with that because I know what I'm supposed to do, and yet I'm going to pretend I don't so that I can do what I want anyway.
Yeah. For me, I have to look at the places where life is asking me to grow and learn and mature and evolve. And one has to believe in that as a useful path. Otherwise, we're just living in reaction to life. And we're just living in reaction to what the TV tells us. Here's what's going on in the world. Here's what you should be talking about. I remember it was a long time ago. I woke up, it was in my 20s that I let go of watching television. I watch TV every once in a while now, but for, 30 years, I didn't watch television because I realized that the TV gave me all my talking points. Mm-hmm. I'd watch the news and then I would talk about it. And I'd watch TV shows and I'd talk about it. And my world was informed by media. And I realized that wasn't quite the world. And when I started living my life and just encountering the world on its own terms, what's really going on here?
Mm-hmm.
I started to notice that the lives that I was observing in TV shows were very fictional.
Yeah.
And I just noticed that we as human beings, we're on a journey. We're on a lifelong journey. We don't know how long that life is going to last, but we're on a journey. And as far as I can tell, it's a learning and growing one because we started out as tiny little infants, completely sort of useless and not able to do anything. And here we are. We've learned. We've grown. We're adults. We're perhaps raising other young humans. And we're perhaps being productive in the world. So we've learned and we've grown. And I don't think that stops.
Right.
So as long as I hold on to that as part of my outlook on life, part of my spiritual practice, then I know what I need to do. It's not easy. So yeah, I want my body to be younger. I want it to have more energy. I want it to be healthier. I want it to have less pain. And when it doesn't, what do I do? How do I be with it? Do I beat myself up because I'm getting older? Do I beat myself up because I have less muscle on my body than I did when I was 30? Or do I adapt? Do I find a different kind of power and strength?
I really love that. I have a friend who's constantly posting about how she's aging and how she literally can't handle it.
Mm.
From my perspective, I'm so happy I have another day.
Mm.
I hope she hears this, what you just said.
Aging isn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't. And if we don't approach it with an expansive outlook, then aging can be misery.
Mm-hmm.
If we haven't made connections, if we don't have intimacy, if we don't have love in our life, if we haven't been giving our gifts, if we don't have people in our lives, then aging can be very lonely. It could not be fun at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, as the body ages, we become more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think men and women have different concerns around aging to a certain degree. I can speak for American culture. Women are valued for their youth and their beauty, oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to lose that, you feel like you're losing everything. So aging is hard in that way. And how do we go from aging to saging? Instead of becoming old and creaky and cranky and mean and nasty, how do we become more wise? I want to tell you, I had a woman client many years ago, 90 years old. She came to see me. And at that time, I was working at Kenyon Ranch Health Resort, wonderful health spa. This one was in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. I just kind of sit in my office and, people have signed up to come and see me. And so this woman walks into the office. So she's 90 years old. And I would have guessed she was about 65. That would have been my guess. And just waltzed in, just carried herself just beautifully. And as she sits down, I was in this instant, I'm thinking to myself, what is it about this woman that's so special? Couldn't quite put my finger on it. And the word came to me. She was just glowing. She was radiant.
Mm-hmm.
And she sits down and says to me, I was like, so how can I help you while you're here? And so she starts telling me her story. She's 90 something years old. And she's just coming to hear whatever new and updated information I could share with her about food and nutrition so she could continue to take care of herself and live younger and healthier. And I'm asking her questions about her life. And she's just this amazing woman, very youthful in her outlook, has a charisma and a charm and a childlike air about her, just still learning. And I said to her, listen, I said, we are going to comp you for this session. I have nothing to teach you. I said, you've just taught me just in 5 minutes, just sitting here. You should be giving advice to people, not me. The thing is, she was radiant and she set the bar for me for aging because I realized, one can be just graceful.
Mm-hmm.
One could be lit up. One could still be learning. And you can tell this wasn't a person who was lamenting about aging. She was embracing it. It's hard to embrace the body as it is. How many times have I heard somebody say to me, particularly women, they'll say, when I was 19, when I was 15, when I was 13, I thought I was fat.
Mm-hmm.
I was dieting. I hated my body. And now I'm 40, I'm 50, I'm 60. I look at myself and I think to myself, what was I thinking? People are really, what was I thinking? I wasted all that time thinking I looked so terrible. I didn't. I would give everything to have that body.
Yeah.
And my response is always the same. 20 years from now, you're going to be saying the same thing. So you might as well now here's your body. This is it.
Right.
Let's play.
I might be in a large body, but it all works. It all feels good. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just seeing it in a different way. It's loving it in a different way.
Yes. I think oftentimes we confuse our preferences for life or death needs.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I prefer to have a certain amount of muscle. I prefer to weigh a certain amount. I prefer a certain kind of fitness.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't make it life and death. If I don't have this, I'm going to hate myself. I'm going to be miserable. Life is going to be terrible. I'm not going to be the real me. No one's going to love me. No, it's okay. Got my preference. And it's fine to have a preference. It's fine to acknowledge, here's my preference
Mm-hmm.
or my looks or my weight. And okay, I don't have that preference right now. How important is it to me? Really? So is it so important that I need to go about and make it happen? Or can I just massage that preference a little bit so it's not so uptight?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe spend a little time putting that preference to the side because I turned it into a life and death need, and just hang for a while with the body I have now. I tell you, a majority of people that I meet who wish to lose weight and who have been wishing to lose weight and or change their body, shapeshift their body for many, many years, for most of their life, they've never had a time when they've just relaxed into and accepted the body they have right now. Literally have not had that experience.
Yeah.
Even when you go to sleep, there's some part of your unconscious that is committed to this body is no good. So you wake up in the morning, you weigh yourself, you look in the mirror, and it's the same body. That's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we never have that experience of this is just okay. There's nothing to change.
Mm-hmm. That's so sad, actually.
It is sad. And it's kind of unacceptable. No, don't do that.
I remember the first time I heard you say, throw away your scale. I thought, well, he means everybody else, not me. Because how will I be able to judge whether what I'm doing is working if I don't have a scale? I remember thinking that, well, he can't mean me. And now I do not have a scale. And I see that the number truly affects you.
Oh, yeah.
1 pound either way.
We give so much power to the tiny little machine.
It's so true. I haven't had a scale in years, and it's really a true blessing. So I thank you for that.
It's liberating when we can see how much power we give to numbers that really don't matter.
Right.
Can you imagine if every day you woke up and your husband says to you, okay, honey, get on the scale. Well, you gained a pound, don't love you.
Well, my first husband kind of did that.
Okay. Therefore, he was...
He's out of there. Yeah.
Right, yes. Yes. So it's unfortunate that we can sometimes draw people to us who reflect our own nonsense that's going on inside the head.
Can I just tell you something about that? I forgave him 20 years later for not loving my body because I realized I didn't love my body, and how could I expect more from him? It occurred to me one day that I expected more from him than I was giving myself. So it just made no sense.
So you know what it's like when someone else is disapproving of your body.
Mm-hmm.
When we disapprove of our own body, it's as much of a crime against our soul.
Yes.
And it's an unconscious crime. That's the thing. We're not designed that way. We're not born that way. If you observe any infant, they're all good. They're naked and they're happy. They don't care what you think about their naked body. They don't care that they have baby fat. And at some point along the way, we learn shame from the environment. We learn guilt about the body from our environment. And we get conflicting messages about pleasure.
Oh, yes, especially as women.
Yes. Well, this is good. Your body's pleasurable, but don't do that. It's bad.
Right.
We call foods sinfully good.
Mm-hmm.
We elevate pleasure on the one hand, and then we tell you to refrain from it on the other hand. And what happens, especially for women, but more and more for men, is that we have a very conflicted relationship with pleasure.
Yeah.
And when we cannot experience our natural birthright of pleasure, we aren't so happy. We can't reach our potential. There are so many levels of pleasure. Just looking at nature can be an absolute pleasure. Looking at a beautiful work of art can be a pleasure. Listening to music that moves you can be a pleasure. Touch can be a pleasure. Food can be a pleasure. Being quiet and at home and just being with yourself can be, so many things can be pleasurable. What happens is that when we make one pleasure wrong, don't eat food. Food is bad. Food makes you fat. Don't eat that. You have an appetite. That's bad because then you're going to eat food and you're going to get... We're taught that food is sort of bad for you because it makes you fat. And if you're fat, then you're going to be miserable and nobody's going to love you. So really the message that we're hearing underneath all that is, well, wait a second, food is really pleasurable. So this means pleasure is bad.
Mm.
So then what happens is if you're going to eat a pleasurable food, you do it in secret. You binge in secret because you're committing a crime. You're committing the crime of pleasure. When we tend to make one pleasure bad, it spills into other pleasures. It spills into pleasure in general. So we almost feel like I cannot be in pleasure. And pleasure is a state that is healing. Pleasure is a state that is empowering. Pleasure is a state that helps us become more happy, creative beings. Pleasure in a relationship fuels the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasure in oneself is nourishing. It's nutritional. It's metabolically healthy. But making one pleasure bad tends to sort of poison the well for the others.
Mm-hmm. You've said this a number of times, not necessarily just now, but that it's your birthright. And I really love that. I took a good 4 decades to decide that I had worth intrinsically, that everybody was worthy of love based on nothing. But that was a new concept to me at 40 some years old. That is a birthright, but I didn't know it. And so is pleasure. And so is eating for pleasure, even eating to nourish. Eating itself is your birthright. And to stop wishing it away, it's getting in. For some reason, we don't know from the beginning. We don't know it's our birthright.
And one of the reasons you might not have known it is because we're often conditioned to believe that in order to be loved, you got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be somebody. Okay, well, if you be this person, then we love you. If you look like this, we love you. If you act like this, we love you. If you say certain things, we don't love you. If you act in certain ways, we don't love you. So part of being a young human is you're trying to determine, well, what do I got to do to be loved? Because as young humans, we are very dependent. We're vulnerable. And naturally, you want your mommy and daddy to love you. Every little creature, we get on YouTube and watch baby lions and elephants and seals and dolphins, and they all want their parents to love them. They want to play.
Mm-hmm.
They're little love balls. And they don't have to do anything to be loved. They just have to, it's just, look, I'm here. I'm lovable. And we forget that at some point because the world conditions it out of us.
I wish I had been a little baby sea lion or whatever, because that wasn't true in my home. Not that anything was done wrong. There was real life happening. So we don't know that necessarily, but I have had so much compassion and love for me because I've had daughters and remembered that I was once this little baby because I love my little babies who are now grown women. But I one day remembered, oh, I was a baby once and lovable and a precious miracle. And so I think that all the time. And this life is a miracle. The fact that I have 9 more years than my mother ever had, I sometimes waste it, but I don't want to. I don't want to.
Yes. And it's a miracle that we can learn these things and act on them and have a better life for it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was young, the old ones in my family, my grandparents were Orthodox, Jewish, often go to Orthodox temple with them. And so many of the prayers were prayers about giving thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You would pray giving thanks for the food on the table. And I could never understand that. It just sounded so why are we being so thankful for the food on the table? There's all this food, let's just eat. And at some point I understood. At some point I understood that gratitude is an essential ingredient in life, because without it, we don't necessarily have a measure for our humanity and for just the gifts that we've been given, and how precious life is and how vulnerable our life is. And in a strange way, how brief it is.
With the people you help, are they mostly women?
I'd say about 90 something percent. It's changed over the years, but because I'm in the universe of helping people with their eating challenges, emotional eating and overeating and binge eating and weight and body image and food worry and endless dieting, that is a realm where women are especially captured.
Yeah.
The feminine mind has an especially vulnerable relationship with critique about its own body. Feminine body has its own unique relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
Feminine body itself is the original nourisher. You're in your mama's womb. You were feeding off of her.
Right.
And then when you popped out, assuming you were breastfed, you got fed by the mama.
Yeah.
And in so many traditional cultures, the men were the hunters and the gatherers, and the women are tending to the camp and tending to the young ones and doing the cooking. So there's this historical genetic connection between women and food that is very powerful. In my experience, what I've noticed, I don't see this talked about very much from a scientific perspective, but women literally experience food differently in the palate and on the tongue.
Oh.
I believe women get much more of an intense pleasure chemistry release from food than most men do.
Don't doubt it.
I'm saying that observationally. So majority of people I work with tend to be women.
I so appreciate you being on this podcast. I really appreciate your time. I'm very excited to have talked to you and you sharing your wisdom. And I so hope that others hear this episode and that they start listening to your podcast, because it's always light bulbs just go off and off and off and off. And at some point, I think they'll stay on.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are very kind words. Thank you so, so much. And it's an honor to be on your podcast and to experience you giving your gift and really facilitating a conversation that matters and that's honest and that's real. And sometimes that's all we have. And it's a lot. It's good.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Beneath Your Beautiful, hosted by Hara Allison. And thank you for your ratings and reviews. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Stay tuned.